now, but back then I was a Jehovah's Witness soldier, and I wanted to make the most of every moment of this. And I had, it was strange though, because the other people in my pioneer school, I felt like were cold fish. I was not impressed by them. I'm sorry. I was a tough customer back in those days. Our instructors were Brother McCaslin and Brother Bensinger. And I got to tell you, at first I was scared at the idea of being in Brother McCaslin's classroom. You see, he was our circuit overseer in the mid-90s, and people were afraid of him. He was reviled because he was a stodgy, stern man who, when he showed up, people got disfellowshipped. And I'm not talking about one or two people. He would, 3, 4, 5 people would be disfellowshipped every visit. I think he personally disfellowshipped them. It was incredible. He was a killer of souls. He disfellowshipped. He went from congregation to congregation, taking people out, and people were afraid of him. And after he left, people talked shit on him. I felt apprehension being under his instruction, but got to pioneer school, and he was a backslapper. It was totally out of character. I couldn't believe it. The pioneer school thing. It's a whole different world and it was odd because Brother McCaslin was like, this guy, and he, doing that type of thing. And I was like, aren't you and my dad enemies? It was strange, but the brothers at Pioneer School were very relaxed. Some of you who have been to Pioneer School, I think, can verify this for the audience, that a lot of it is just joking around, people playing pranks on each other. People, doing the silly string on each other's cars. I remember somebody put a cup of water over a half-open door in a doorway of the Kingdom Hall. I know, it's unheard of, things like that. But it's a very joking atmosphere there at Pioneer School because you're in the club. And you know what? So much of life as a Jehovah's Witness just sucks. So to have that, it was a nice experience. It just wasn't what I was expecting. And I got to tell you, for those 2 weeks when you're at Pioneer School, it is something special because I'd have people I didn't know walking up and hugging me. I'd be in the foyer of the Kingdom Hall, spin around, and somebody would grab me and hug me. And presents. Friends, I had gifts. My bedroom at home, I'd come home in the evening and I had a pile of gifts people gave me. People I didn't know were giving me presents. Someone gave me a Seiko watch that had my name engraved in the back plate. This was a $200 watch from when we first got to Pioneer School, we got gift baskets, and these were not crummy gift baskets. They were filled with wonderful things. And on our last day there, we got another gift basket. It was from Brother Bensinger's wife. She had made these gift baskets, and they were incredible. They weren't the size of... These were large baskets. It was like a cornucopia. And let me tell you about the food. I have never seen a spread like that. And I mean every day. The people from local congregations would come. White tablecloths, silverware, incredible food, as much as you could eat of it. Aside from that, though, I have to tell you that it was strange to me. It was not what I was expecting because, again, pioneering was my big thing that I was going to do in life. I was raised by an elder, and this was my calling. This is what I was going to do. Some of the other students, though, I didn't know who they were or how they got there. Now I do understand because I've been around. I have a larger worldview now, but I couldn't figure out some of my fellow students. Out in service, I was grouped with another young man named Jason. We were the same age. First day of field service, he took the first door, and it was embarrassing. A householder asked him a question, and he said, "I don't know." When we walked away from that door, I told him, first of all, I took over the conversation with the householder. When we were walking away, I said, "You will not take another door." And I'm sorry. I'm tough but fair. And you know what? I think he was relieved. I don't think he wanted to do that. And I couldn't understand it at the time. Because now, later in life, my heart gave out. And I actually did go to pieces at doors. Now I have been in that situation where I have crumbled at a door and I just didn't. But at the time, it was a foreign thing to me. And I was not pleased with this guy. I'm sure he was an okay guy. I wasn't happy about it. Another woman who was in the Pioneer School was a woman in her 40s. She had teenage children, and she was a pioneer. I couldn't understand how or why, because this woman was so timid. She never raised her hand in class, and when the instructors called on her anyway, she was so timid that she couldn't even speak up. Her voice was softer than a whisper. I couldn't understand it. She reminded me sort of like Talia Shire from the movie Rocky. She was so frightfully quiet that I said, this woman went out in service for 1,000 hours. 1,000 hours. You see, Pioneer School would make more sense if you went to Pioneer School before, since you're getting instruction for how to go out in service. It would make more sense if you did that before you went out in service for 1,000 hours. But again, it's the club thing. Because everybody would go to Pioneer School and then never follow through on the pioneering. So you got to do it for a year first, and you have to be confirmed by the elders. But I get it. It's the club thing. This was... But the instructors were actually pretty good for the duration of... I actually took a great deal of comfort in how reassuring they were. I remember something that Brother Bensinger said, and it stuck with me for a long time. He said that you would be better off being homeless and still attending the meetings and going out in service. He said that even if you lose your house, lose all your money, lose everything, and you are still able to get your family to the meetings and take them out in service, then because the Bible says, he that does not provide for his household is worse than a person without faith. Well, that scripture is misunderstood sometimes because, according to Brother Bensinger, that means providing spiritually. And for some reason, I took a great deal of comfort in that I didn't have to worry about the future, because no matter what happened, as long as you are still attending meetings and field service, you and your family will be all right. Of course, now that sounds ridiculous, because no, you're not going to be all right. And a person in their right mind would not view things. Look, if your family's homeless, it's not okay. You got problems. But the one thing that I take away from Pioneer School now was an awkward situation that transpired when we were sitting in a back room. And it was the get to know each other session of Pioneer School. And one by one, they were going across the room, and people were explaining when they made the truth their own. And I remember one young man talking about, of course, these weren't people who were brought in off the street. These are people who were born-ins, raised Jehovah's Witnesses, and I couldn't understand it because they were all, it is the amazing grace syndrome that was going on, that people were describing their tales of redemption. And it perplexed me. I didn't understand it because one person was talking about how he had stopped going to all the meetings when he was in high school. He got interested in kickboxing. He wanted to be a Taibo guy or whatever. And for a while there, he was limping upon two opinions. He couldn't decide if he wanted to go into the Tai Bo thing, or he wanted to be a Jehovah's Witness, but finally he made the right decision. Another woman was talking about how in her workplace, her lowest moment was when a man at work was making advances to her, and she had agreed to meet him, but at the last minute she found Jehovah again. And when the discussion came around, to me, I should have thought of something. I couldn't. I told, when they asked me, when did you make the truth your own? I told them, well, I'm a third generation Jehovah's Witness. I've always been in the truth. And Brother McCaslin said, yes, but when was the moment when you chose Jehovah over the world? And I couldn't think of anything, because I had never, maybe that's why I didn't make it as a Jehovah's Witness, because I never got tested in that way. I don't know what to say, but I couldn't understand how all these people who were born Jehovah's Witnesses had this tale of, and you hear it at circuit assemblies all the time, people that they had the moment of truth where they were almost going to go into Satan's system of things, but then they found Jehovah again, and I couldn't come up with anything, and I just said, I've always been in the truth, and I always will be. And but back then I was a Jehovah's Witness soldier, and I wanted to make the most of every moment of this. And I had, it was strange though, because the other people in my pioneer school, I felt like were cold fish. I was not impressed by them. I'm sorry. I was a tough customer back in those days. Our instructors were out, and people were afraid of him. And after he left, people talked shit on him. I felt apprehension being under his instruction, but got to pioneer school, and he was a backslapper. It was totally out of character. I couldn't believe it. He was. The pioneer school thing, it's for Brother McCaslin and Brother Bensinger. And I got to tell you, at first I was scared at the idea of being in Brother McCaslin's classroom. You see, he was our circuit overseer in the mid-90s, and people were afraid of him. He was reviled because he was a stodgy, stern man who, it's a whole different world and it was odd because Brother McCaslin was like, this guy, and he, doing that type of thing. And I was like, aren't you and my dad enemies? It was strange. But the brothers at Pioneer School were very relaxed. Some of you who have been to Pioneer School, I think, can verify this for the audience, that a lot of it is just, when he showed up, people got disfellowshipped. And I'm not talking about one or two people. He would 3, 4, 5 people would be disfellowshipped every visit. I think he personally disfellowshipped them. It was incredible. He was a killer of souls. He disfellowshipped. He went from congregation to congregation, taking people